Hi, folks. All right. Ooh, that might not work. I may have to go somewhere else to get a better connection. We are digging in today on my own. We're going to go through what I'm getting as the frequently asked questions for the A.L.I.G.N mindset and what it means for you and how it can affect you. Oh, mind not the peanuts. Give me 1 second. Sorry about the sniffles. It is officially fall time, which means that I'm getting allergies, and it's pretty awesome. Why can't I switch? All right, let's see if I can do this on 2 things at once. Video. Nope. Live. Nope. Me. Yep. Live. Go live. I'll be more organized next time, potentially. There we go. Boop, boop, boop. All right. I'm going to say this is probably good. Doop, 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 doop. Add a title. Add a title. I don't know how to add a title. Go live. Nope. Okay, screw it. I'm going to stay here. All right. We're here talking about the A.L.I.G.N mindset, which is a school classroom that I've put together, a coursework for getting a real solid understanding of who you are and who you are meant to be. Oh, if that's going to work, easy. Flip. Go live. Perfect. All right, we'll do both. All right. We are going live today. We're going to answer some frequently asked questions about the the A.L.I.G.N mindset and what it is, how it works, why you should care at all, and what our intended outcomes are, where it all came to, why it all came to pass, and that type of stuff. What A.L.I.G.N is. We'll just start at the easiest stuff. What A.L.I.G.N is. A.L.I.G.N is an acronym for a system of thought that if you put it into any particular situation will help you recognize all of the players within that situation, the pieces that might have triggered you in some way or another, as far as like, is this a good situation? Is this a bad situation? Really being able to access and understand the little voice inside your head that tells you whether a thing is good or bad, a circumstance or situation is a good one or bad one, and then dig into that information to really get an understanding of what part of the circumstance was the thing that triggered you. We call those ping points. And then making a change, should that circumstance or situation or group of people or whatever, making a change to correct your involvement, and then keeping an eye on those changes and see what the outcome was of those changes, to see if that change was a good change, a useless change, a bad change, to see if there is a possible, there is some tweaking that could be done. And then once we realize that we have a good change, making space for changes of that sort, making space for that change to fully flourish and become a new way of who you are. And like I said, it's meant for individual circumstances, but it's also I'm going to turn off my headphones. It's also meant to be something that you can put into place across all of your life. And so the biggest thing is, with the aligned mindset, people have to recognize first and foremost that who they want to be on the inside is an attainable thing, is an attainable goal. And who they are now, they've got to recognize that there's some sort of disconnect there, that the either the choices that they've made passively or proactively to get to where they are in life have taken them to a situation in their own life that is not in line with the person that they've always dreamed that they would be. And so that is step one. And that in itself is the acknowledgement of one of those ping points going off, being like, the job I'm with, the friends I have, the way that I interact with my family, the choices that I make on the weekend, or how I spend my free time, how I speak, level of education, my hobbies, whatever. All of that stuff, combines into a life. And we're all just trying to make the best out of the life that we've got. The problem is that so often, because of the way your brain actually works, so often the life that you've created is a product of habits that you weren't necessarily intentionally creating when they were being created. So very oftentimes the habits that we have are based on systems that we put into place through childhood, who raised us, who were our friends, who we hung out with, the things that we did, the disciplines and lack thereof that we've allowed into who we are. And those things all put together without intentional moves to change any of it are going to just reiterate themselves over and over and over. Your brain is a feedback loop, and it is going to bring in what you've already brought in. So if you are one of those people, just for instance, if you're one of those people that is constantly being annoyed by traffic, we'll just go with like the most hands-off, out of it situation we could possibly be in. Traffic, something that is outside your control, you are giving the input to your subconscious mind that traffic is something we're looking out for, and that traffic is something that is going to kick us into this negative mindset every time we interact with it, and is the ping point that we're aware of. And so now that we have hated traffic enough to create a habit of hating traffic, now the subconscious mind takes over and says, oh, we're looking out for traffic. Let's feed up traffic, because traffic, we have been told, and the subconscious mind just takes in facts, we have been told is a bad thing, and we need to be aware of it. So that parallels what we're doing with the entirety of our lives. If you wake up and snooze the alarm 5 times, which I'm definitely guilty of, snooze the alarm 5 times and get out of bed 3 minutes before you need to be out the door. I've done that. And get to work just in time to kind of catch your breath before the day has started. Then that is a habit that we are going to reiterate and reiterate and reiterate without any conscious thought, unless we intentionally go in and create some real hands-on give a shit so that we can change that pattern. So my wife and I just recently, in the last 2-3 weeks, have started waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is an hour and 15 minutes before I need to be out the door. I work at a factory in my normal human job and in the environmental department. And so I have to be there at 6:45, and I do a handoff with the guy that I'm relieving, and that takes about 3 minutes. And then I get out the door and I get my day started. Now, what I had been doing is waking up at 6 o'clock, getting my clothes on, getting my stuff together, heading out the door at 6:15, whatever. And that's fine. That has been working the way it needs to. It gets me to work and I'm fine. But we've made this habit now, because we have a new puppy that wakes up pretty regularly at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, is we're going to wake up at 5. And it's just going to give us more time in the day to sit, rethink, maybe do some work for our socials or business endeavors or whatever. Pardon the trash. I'm out here because the dogs are going to be loud, but apparently out here is going to be loud too. Anyway, it gives us more time in the day to relax, just enjoy the nature out back. We sit on our back deck and enjoy our coffee and timing. And it lets us resync ourselves for the day, regardless of what happened yesterday, and regardless of what happened with how we slept or any of the bad or good that happened yesterday, this morning. Now that we're waking up early, it's just our time to reconnect, recalibrate, zone in, and get our. There's no way he's not doing that on purpose. And zone in so that we can focus in a way that is useful to our day. And whether that's me going to work that morning or not, it lets us just get our feet a-going. Now, if we had not made the conscious intention, because the puppy can wake up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, go outside, and then come back to bed and fall asleep. And then we could fall back asleep, and that would be fine, because there's nothing calling on my wife to do anything until about 7:30. There's nothing calling on me to do anything until about 6:05 if I really want to push it. So it'd be fine. We could get another hour and a half of sleep, 2 hours, whatever, and we could do that and nothing would change. The reason that we are waking up at 5 is because we put intentional thought into making a change, because our feedback loop had been designed in such a way to just get up at the last second, get our stuff going, and roll. And now that we have put intentional thought into creating a change, we don't have that sense of urgency. The day starts a lot calmer, and it's just because we saw a problem, made a change, and creating that habit is going to take some time. Creating that habit is going to be, weeks down the line before I'm naturally waking up at 5 o'clock, but it is good for me. It is something I've needed to do for a long time. And so I'm going to put serious effort into it. At the same time, when that serious effort fails you, when I do wake up at 8:30 on a day that I'm not working, I'm not going to beat myself in the head over it. Habits take time to take hold, and habits take time to really start to work on their own. Forcing a habit in, making a change, is not what your subconscious wants. Your subconscious wants to do the thing you did yesterday, and not because it's trying to do things against you, but yesterday you survived. Yesterday you made it through the day. Yesterday, and survived is actually probably the best word, because I'm not sure that yesterday you thrived, or you wouldn't be watching this or giving a crap. You wouldn't be looking at potentially getting into the Aligned Mindset classroom and coursework. You wouldn't be stopped here. So yesterday you survived is good and bad. You made it through the day mostly unscathed, but survived is not the goal. We should be reaching towards thriving. We should be reaching towards meeting some goals. We should be and creating a reality around us that's conducive to that, making sure that the people we're hanging out with, the words that we decide to say out loud, the situations that we find ourselves in or plan ourselves to be in, the job that we're going to every day, the habits and hobbies and free time is being spent in a way, all of that stuff is being utilized in a way that is going to bring you into your greatest self. It is going to bring you into the person that you've always wanted to be. Excuse me again. The allergies. So the Align mindset, I told you it's an acronym. Align is A.L.I.G.N. A is acknowledge. You got to know that something's wrong or right before you decide anything about that something. Let's just call it a circumstance, a situation. You've got to know that situation is feeding you or not before you can make a decision to lean into it or push away from it. Okay, that's acknowledge. Acknowledge is just hearing the voice in your head saying, "Oh, this is where I want to be," or "Oh, this is not me. This is not what I like." L is lean in and learn. Lean in and learn is once you hear that voice, you're going to dig into the situation. What situation made that voice go off in your head? Let's just call it a bad thing, right? You're in a situation that you don't like. You're around X people. You're talking about X subject. You're doing X activity. It's X time of night on X day, whatever. There's a lot of information to be grabbed from that circumstance, from that situation. And your job with Lean In and Learn is just to dig into it and pull out as much information as you can. Much of the information that you pull out of it is not going to be the reason that you didn't like the situation you were in. Much of that information is going to be just information, just that you were at a coffee shop and it was a Friday at noon and you ordered a super duper mocha choca bullshit, whatever. Some of that information is just information, but there's going to be information that you pull from that that's going to be very telling as to why your inner alarm, your ping point went off that said, this is not what I want to be doing. And maybe it is who you're at the coffee shop with. Maybe it is what you did yesterday or last night and didn't get enough sleep and whatever, or you didn't have enough water this morning, or you didn't eat a proper breakfast. If you're a breakfast person, I'm not. But there's going to be information that you can pull from that is going to tell you what part of that circumstance set off a ping point. The I in Align is incorporate change. Once you recognize that there is a problem and you want to push away from it, you have to incorporate a change to push away from it. And that change is, don't do that. Don't hang out with those people. Stop saying yes to everybody. Don't talk about that subject. Make sure that you've got enough water before you try interacting with people, or make sure that you don't eat too heavy of a lunch so that your 2 o'clock isn't you starting to fall asleep at work. There's all sorts of things that could be the change that gets you one step closer to who you are meant to be. So incorporate change is once you've got all that information, you just change one thing. And the incorporate change should start small. Small changes are going to be easier to maintain. And again, once your change has been put into place, if you have failure days, that's not an indictment on you. It is just what the situation is. And it is not a time to stop. It is a time to maybe rest for a day and then start again tomorrow. Just like diet, starting a diet, just like exercise, just like anything where real change is the intent. Off days are not days to, beat yourself in the face over it. Off days are just a day that it didn't work, and tomorrow we're going to try to make it work again. The G in A.L.I.G.N is grow. You're going to keep your eye out for any of the changes that you made to start to grow fruit in your life. You made this change to not go out as late on Friday night. Whatever. We're just going to call it that. So not to go out as late on a Friday night. Now, 4 weeks later, when you've made yourself go home at 10 instead of midnight, or midnight instead of 2, or 8, right? Instead of 10, you got home, you were able to kind of go through your bedtime routine, get yourself comfy, whatever your nighttime thing is, and then go to bed, and you got a good night of sleep. Weeks later, now that you have some information to pull from the change, you can see if it's growing or not, if it's giving you fruit. And when you realize that, oh, that was the change I needed, you're going to keep that change rolling, obviously, but then see if there are other places in your life that you could incorporate a similar change. If you're staying out late on a Friday night because you have game night with your buddies, and now you have decided, I'm going to host this thing so that I can kick them out at 10 o'clock so that I can go through my process and get myself to sleep at a good time. Now I'm going to look at also Wednesday. I'm taking 2 classes at the Y. I could kick out the later one and get home at a better time. That's the type of growth we're looking for, is that we're looking for this worked, and we're going to see the growth. And now we're into N, nurture, which is to see the growth and give yourself the opportunity to incorporate that same type of change in more than one area of your life. Because ping point is not just a ping point based on that one situation. That ping point is a ping point for you, for who you are. So when you nurture that growth and start to spread it out over more of your life, it is going to lessen the opportunities for ping points to show up based on that one situation. That's the explanation of what the aligned mindset is. Now, there is a lot that goes into each one of those steps to hammer into place some neuroplasticity to get your brain moving in a situation that is going to force those changes to take place. It is going to force you to be more aware of your ping points. It's going to force you to be more aware of that voice in your head that's saying this is wrong, or that, even better, that voice in your head that's saying this is exactly where I want to be. This is who I am as a person, or this situation is part of who I am as a person. So there's a lot of neuroplasticity that goes into it. There are a lot of practices and tools that we set out so that these things can become unconscious habits, so that they're just things that are kicking on in the back of your brain without you doing any work after you do a lot of work. And the whole thing, though it does just apply to a certain situation, and you're going to acknowledge there's a problem, you're going to lean into it, you're going to learn about it, you're going to incorporate a change, you're going to see the growth from the change, and you're going to nurture that growth, spread it out, do whatever. Though that whole mindset is just situational, is just meant to get you in through a circumstance and start to make changes in your life based on each individual circumstance. What you'll note is that acknowledge step becomes more vague, not vague, more spread out. It's not necessarily about the circumstance. Maybe now it's about the entire day. Maybe this day is wrong because of who I'm meant to be and who I'm being in this day, right? This day is wrong because I'm being the reality me, and I need to be the core me. And so defining your core is obviously part of that. We go through a process where you can literally just list your attributes, your perfect attributes, the ones that you know are part of who you want to be as a person. You list those attributes, and then you go through those attributes and you figure out where they line up in your real life. So if your attribute is I'm always 10 minutes early, that's the thing you want to be. That's the perfect you, part of the perfect you. Then the opposite of that is where is the reality you? I'm always rolling in about 4 minutes late. Well, you then have the opportunity to score all of those attributes on a scale of 1 to 100. How far away from the goal am I? And then you would take all of your scores, average them out, and that's what we're going to call your degree of separation. That score is then how far is my reality from the core essence of who I want to be. And that's your degree of separation score. And the goal is, as you go through this loop process, as you start tackling individual circumstances one at a time, you start to see that score. If you were to go back through the list and rescore yourself, you start to see that score lessen and lessen and lessen until there's zero. If you're at zero, you got nothing to do. You're being the core of who you want to be. You are, maybe I'm not anxious and I'm not a people pleaser, and I know who I am and I know what I stand for. And on the weekends, I work on cars, and for work, I do this, and my friends group is this, and we talk about this, and we talk like this. You get those lists all in sync. Your perfect you is realized, and your perfect you is acting on your behalf, because that is you now. And that's the goal, is to get your core essence of who you know you could be to play a part, to play the only part in your life, to be the reason that you are content, that you have peace. So, sorry for all the sniffles. Again, allergies, fall time. I'm fighting it. So that is what A.L.I.G.N is. That's one of the goals of A.L.I.G.N. We also went through that. How does it work? It's a 12-week course. I think actually an 11-week course. The intro doesn't actually count, I don't think. But anyway, it's a 11 or 12-week course, and there's a week's worth of homework every week. There's a video every week. There is a short blog-ish type thing to read through as well. And then you just do homework for the week. 1 week is setting up that degree of separation thing, just being honest with yourself about who you want to be, and being really, really honest with yourself about who you aim to be. And also, one of the fundamental pillars of this thing is we're judgment free. We don't care what the ping point was. We don't care how you handled yourself. If we're doing this after the fact, if the ping point is something we're dealing with after it's happened, then you can't do anything about that. You can only do about any of it from here on out. So we are judgment free across the board. One of the other key components of this whole thing, as those habits start to form, and as you really start to listen to your ping points on, yeah, this is it, or no, this is not it. Yeah, this is where I want to be, or no, there's something about this that doesn't jive with who I am. Those ping points will start to, instead of being something that you deal with 2 days later, after you've cooled down enough to deal with them, you start to deal with them 1 day later, and you start to deal with them later that day, and you start to deal with them directly after the situation happened. And then you get to the point where you're so used to listening to your ping points that you can change the situation in real time. And that is the part that gets your life changing in a really, really productive way. If we were to ask you right now, if I was to ask you right now, what is one of the main things that triggers you on a daily basis? And you say, you say, okay, personal example here. And this doesn't quite play because I've already done the work, but we'll play it like it does play. My vehicle's blinkers stopped working. So that's a trigger. My 44-year-old impractical convertible is always needing work. We'll just say that, always needing work. Well, that in itself can be a ping point. What is it today? Just go out there just pissed. You're ready to start the car. You're trying to get to work. Start the car. What's it going to be today? Car. And today the blinkers don't work. Well, after the fact, I can look through that information. Why was I pissed all day today? Well, one of the first things you did today was find out that your car wasn't working the way you wanted it to. So after the fact, you're seeing that. Now, I'm going to see that the next day or the day after if I'm doing this work, if I'm starting off in the align process, because that's the entirety of the start, right? Is to look back at the things that have kicked you off, have gotten you out of rhythm, out of sync, right? To look back at those things and start to do the work. Now, as that practice becomes more and more stable, and as that practice becomes more and more part of who you are, it is not a couple days later you realize it was the car that made your Friday suck. It's now Friday you realize midway through the day, be like, oh, it's the freaking car. I'm dealing with the car again. Okay. All right. Well, I'm home. I don't need to go anywhere. The car's fine. I have the parts on order or whatever. I've got the mechanic scheduled and he's going to come pick it up, whatever it is. So now you can recognize it on the day. The real beautiful gem of this thing is being able to walk out to the car on a Friday morning, feel it bubble in you. What's it going to be today, car? And instead of what's it going to be today, car, you can actually hear yourself say the words. Thank you. You can actually hear yourself say the words and get yourself to the point where you're allowed to laugh about it, where you can say, it's the car again. I bought this car. I like this car. I don't like that it has to be worked on all the time. What can I do about it? I can either get a car that's more dependable, that maybe I don't like as much. So there's give and take on all these things, right? There's pros and cons to every choice that you're going to make, every change that you're going to incorporate. There's good and bad. So I can get a car that's more dependable, that I'm not necessarily going to like as much. I can take into account that it's a 44-year-old vehicle, and maybe part of the quirkiness of it, part of the joy of having it is that it's not as dependable as maybe some other things. That's not exactly the case here, and you can divvy these things out into pros and cons. You can make changes, and they may seem like extreme changes, but if you were to make the change to the more dependable car that maybe you don't love as much, but the heater really works well and it kicks on every time you try to start it, and you made that change, and now 2 months later your days are all better, you look back on the last 2 months, be like, oh, I haven't been such an asshole because I haven't started my day off in a bad way. Now, what I did in real time with my car, just as a personal anecdote, I had taken a bunch of it apart so that I could paint it. It's got the classic, like early 90s, late 80s, maroonish red carpet interior across the board, and then red leather seats. And I just don't like the red. It's a white car. It needs to be either blue or green accents, obviously. And so I decided to go with blue. So I redid the entire inside for blue, and I painted the inside console and just the console area, like the center, black, because it was red also. When I put it back together, it then sat for 3 or 4 days because it was super rainy and I was taking another vehicle to work. And then when I got back in it, I had forgotten that the last thing I did was touch it. I forgot that was it. I was sure that I'd driven it since then and had no problems, but the blinkers weren't working. So I've got to troubleshoot that, right? I start troubleshooting the blinkers. My son and I are actually walking through the electrical there's some relays, some aftermarket relays that somebody had added into it to bring the blinkers into the headlights. And we were trying to figure out if that was the problem and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, I don't think it's because I tore it apart, but let's dig into me tearing it apart. And I checked the hazard plug, which is a circular plug, and it can actually go in two ways, which I thought it could only go in one. It can only plug in one way, but it can go in two. I unplugged it the one way, plugged it in the other way, blinkers work, no problem. I was living high on life because I'd figured it out and got it fixed and got it put back together. And then the next morning, I'm stoked to take the car to work and not have to use hand signals out the window to make my turns. And the key snaps off in the ignition. Cool. So I still took it to work. It started with a flathead screwdriver. I still took it to work. And again, living high on life because I really like the car. I don't mind that it's quirky. And I've already done the pro-con list. Like, I'd rather it be quirky and I really like it than be super dependable and I hate it. So, and I'm the kind of guy that doesn't mind the work. I don't mind getting all tangled out of place and getting underneath the dash and trying to figure out what's going on with the ignition switch and all that, or the blinkers, or the whatever. Distributor was also a problem. Anyway, I don't mind the work. But the trick is when you're cussing out the work, you've got to recognize if you don't mind the work. It's easy to get pissed about it because it's kicking your ass right now, but you kind of like it and you like the outcome of having solved it and having fixed it. And in my personal experience, it's easy to cuss out the work while it's happening when in reality you actually like doing it. You like the return on that investment. So anyway, started with a flathead. I got it to work. I got to drive it to work. And then I went out after work, had flathead in the passenger seat, and it wouldn't turn because the piece of key that was in the ignition had shifted a little bit. And so the tumblers aren't in the right position. My wife ended up bringing me a little tiny pokey tool. I got the key to move into the right position, used the flathead to start it up again, got it back home, and it's been sitting since. That could all be a valid reason to be really upset. But I know what the pros and cons are. I've already done the internal mental exercise of pros and cons. Pros, the pros of this vehicle are it's super freaking cute. Cute's the right word. It's not a masculine, like, beefy me vehicle. But you've got to do the pros and cons work to know whether or not what you're going through, as far as the changes that you've incorporated, as far as the people that you've decided you're going to hang out with, places you're going to be, the way you're going to speak, the way you're going to navigate the world. You've got to do the pros and cons list to see if the changes that you're going to make are actually worth it. And sometimes the way you take away that information is based on how you are actively thinking and the habit of thought that you've created for yourself. So you've almost got to go back a step to realize, is the way that I'm even thinking in sync with who I'd like to be? Is the way that I'm navigating the world right now in step with the core essence of who I am? And if it isn't, then maybe I'm not even able to trust the decision I'm going to make right now. Maybe I need to make this decision a little bit later on in life so that I can right some other ships in my fleet and then see where the wind is taking us, right? Seems like a lot, but that's what it is. Why do I care about the A.L.I.G.N mindset? What happened to me was I started doing a stage show called Focus, and it was a mentalism stage show. I started doing mind reading and telepathy and telekinesis and reading the future and blah, 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 blah. And it's magic tricks, basically. I mean, it's just well-performed magic tricks, but it was really a lot of fun. And I started to do it for corporate events and like staff meeting type things. And as I started to reach out to the people that I had performed for to get reviews so that I could make that a bigger thing, I started to get pretty consistently. We loved the tricks, the mentalism part, but we really liked that you're lacing in this positivity speak along with it. And I kind of had to look back at my show and look back at those performances and be like, oh, yeah, I'm naturally doing that without really thinking about it, because that's who I am to begin with, because I am the eternal optimist on the outset. I'm already doing that without even really thinking about it. Maybe I should lean into that. And so I actually stopped doing the Mentalism show altogether, and I started working on a book called Focus. And Focus was the 5 fears that are going to stop you from taking on any goals, right? And then from Focus came, how do you know if your goals are even right for you? So then A.L.I.G.N came out in my brain. The system of thought designed in a way so that you can really figure out who you are and really figure out what you're about and start to get the reality of who you are into alignment with who you are and what you're about at the core. And so that started out as a book that I'm in the, it's with my editor right now, and it'll be available at some point. And then that turned into a workbook based on the genius idea from my mom when I wrote Focus and had her proofread it, that should be a workbook as well. And A.L.I.G.N became a workbook, and A.L.I.G.N really became something that started to just sink into my soul, sink into the core essence of who I am and how I think to begin with, that really, really serves me, really serves me in a positive and good way. I don't have a lot of bad days, and it's not because my life is going so freaking great that I couldn't possibly have bad days. My wife and I are basically paycheck to paycheck. We have a good marriage. We have 2 sons that are pretty stinking good. Sometimes they're a pain in the ass, but that's sons. They're 14 and 12. But there's plenty of stress. There's plenty of, okay, let's move that bill to make sure this bill, and then that bill will take care of next time, that type of stuff. There's plenty of car breaking down. Baby, I need to put $60 into my car to make it work again. Tell me when I can do that. And there's plenty of situations like that, and health issues that I won't go into now, but there's plenty of them that we deal with all the time. And I realized that this stuff hasn't broken me because of the way that I view it as it's coming towards me. Not that I'm viewing it after the fact, not that I'm blindly autopiloting my way through this stuff in a way that is going to help me to survive it. No, it's because I can see it as it's coming. Or if it's one of those things that it's there, which sometimes those things happen, even when it's there, it's just a natural response for me to really take all of the information in and make a decision at that point if it's time to freak out or not. And so we don't have a lot of bad days here. I don't personally have a lot of bad days, and it's because the A.L.I.G.N mindset has been a part of the way that I think since the get-go. And it's just now that I've realized that and got it into a book, got it into a workbook that are all going to be available, and then got it into this classroom and made step-by-step videos, homework, a way for somebody else to incorporate the things that I'm trying to teach. So that's why the A.L.I.G.N mindset. And how does it work? It just does. If you really, really make it your default system of thought, your default lens through which you're viewing the entire world becomes not something that's happening to you, but something that is happening, and you get to decide how you're going to navigate it. And that's the real goal here, is to help you to become a person who navigates the world. This is perfect. I'm going to end with this. My buddy Jeremy and I had trained for like 6 months to do the BIX. The BIX is I think 7-mile race. Yeah, BIX 7. It's a 7-mile race, and we were in much better shape. This was probably 10 years ago or something. And I was in better shape than I am now, but I was not in really great 7-mile shape. I could push through, and I did, and I made it. But what I realized when I was running it was if people are passing you, you are subject to their decision on where they want to go, on where they want to be in the race, right? If they're passing you, they get to choose where you are going to be in relation to them. And if you are in charge of that race, if you are the one passing other people, and I don't mean this in like a look down on the people that are around you situation, I just mean if you are in charge, if your hands are on the wheel of the race that is your own life, you get to choose how you're navigating through those streets, how you're navigating through that life. I was being passed all morning for that 7-mile run. And all morning I was just getting out of people's way and like, sorry, you obviously know what you're doing. I'm going to move away a little bit. And as I was running, I laughed, thinking to myself and thinking, I really need to message my buddy Chris Ward because he'd like this. He's a runner guy and he would like the parallel. But I was thinking as it was happening, if this is life and people around you know what they're doing, you just have to, and you don't, and you're not prepared, and you're not mentally prepared, you're not physically prepared, you're not emotionally prepared, spiritually prepared, whatever you want to call it, or however many of those things are actually in the play. If you are not prepped to be in charge of that situation, then you are destined to be pushed around by the choices of other people. And I think that's where I have to leave it. Aligned mindset will make it so that you are in charge of your destination, of you are in charge of the way you are navigating the world. And the people around you can choose to be a part of it or choose not to be. But if they choose not to be, now you have more width and more breadth to make your own decisions. It has to do with the people you're around. It has to do with the way that you're spending your time, the job that you've chosen, the family members and how you interact with them. Just it has to do with everything. And once you are in control and once you are aware of everything, then you start to be able to gain control. Awareness equals accountability equals power. And once you have that power, the rest of your life just falls into place. The rest of your life just becomes the thing that you get to manipulate and maneuver however you want to. And it makes it really easy to get in line with the core of who you are and to really get in line and be in sync with who you're meant to be on the inside. And I really hope that that's something that speaks to you and that some of these answers helped you out. I hope to just see you in the classroom. I think it's going to be ridiculously useful for anybody that takes it on. And I just challenge you to give yourself 12 weeks, see what kind of life change you can make through the aligned mindset. I hope these answers have given you some insight and maybe some motivation to do it for yourself. And I will just see you guys next time I see you.